I'm going to present to some and introduce to others none other than Mr. Nash. But before he comes, let me share with you. I call myself Mr. Tampa. He called me and he said, hey, Mr. Tampa, I'm going to be in town for one day and then I'm headed to Atlanta. Can you meet me to Ocean Prime? This was my very first time going to Ocean Prime. So I walk in and the young lady says, what's your name? I said, I'm Mr. Tampa. She said, excuse me? I said, I'm Mr. Tampa. She said, do you have reservations? Do you all realize how I felt at that moment? She said, if you don't have reservations, there's a 2.5 hour wait. When that said, started from the bottom and I'm here, Cedric hits the door. Young lady says, oh, Mr. Nash, we have a table and everything reserved for you. So I walked up to her and this is what I said to her. You better put some respect on my name. I'm with him. So, why don't all of us stand and show some love for Cedric Nash?
Now we're here.
Thank you, man. Thank you. What a good introduction. Please, you guys, be seated. I'm really not that fancy. So happy to be here. This is my first home. I live in St. Pete and across all over the place. Happy to see all you wonderful people. My good friend Steve Edmondson, a former executive. I've been knowing him for Steve probably over 20 years, right? Yeah, I've happened to show up. I was surprised to hear him, to see that he came to arrive. So happy you guys came here. I wanted to, I'm kicking off my Ignite Black Wealth book tour. And I started in my hometown of Seaside, California, where I was fortunate enough to give the Martin Luther King speech. I had to play Martin Luther King for the event. I'm joking, but I was happy to do that. And then I went to Oakland, California, where I started my business. And the 100 Black Men hosted an event on Wednesday night. And so I had to come to Tampa because this is my home too. So Drew was kind enough to host me. And then my good buddy, Hugh Campbell and Miss Bradley were kind enough to be sponsors. And they bought about 40 books that we're going to raffle off. So I really appreciate your guys' support here. Really appreciate that. But like I said, I'm Cedric Nash, founder of Oakland Consulting Group, which is my tech firm that's based out of Washington, D.C. I'm also founder of the Black Wealth Summit. I'm an author, wealth coach, and I'm fired up about black wealth. Now, I am a self-appointed wealth coach because I'm just so passionate about this subject. I've been really studying finance since college, even though my degree was in computer science. I got a master's degree in business. But I've just been really, really fired up about this subject, largely because I had the pleasure of having 4 Black millionaire mentors who poured into me and my community, and I learned so much from them that I wanted to emulate them. And that's really where it comes from. I want to thank Drew, Mr. AKA Mr. Tampa, for setting this up. Also, David Carmina, who was kind enough to put me on his podcast and been a big supporter of this event. Daryl Johnson, Joshua Bent, for having me on their platforms. And then also my buddy Hugh Campbell and Miss Bradley, and special thanks for my assistant Jay and my girlfriend Dawn, who's back there helping us out with this event. So I'm gonna try to keep this moving, but you know, there's just something I wanna say that, you know, I don't do this for money, but I do it for followers. So if you guys have Instagram, please follow me, because I'm trying to grow my social media. You know, as old cats, we don't do social media too well, so that's why I have Jay helping me out. So if you can, please follow me on social media. My social media is growing, and that's where I kind of mentor and give a lot of advice for free. So basically, on Martin Luther King's Day, I kind of want to bring you back to that speech that I did a little bit. But, you know, on April 3rd, 1968, some of you remember that day, Dr. King's final speech. I've been to the mountaintop. Just one day before his assassination, he began to shift kind of his social agenda to one of an economic agenda. And I want to share with you, I'm not going to read the whole speech, but there are pieces of it that gave you a glimpse of his strategy. And it'll become clear why I'm doing this as I get further down the line. You know, Dr. King traveled to Memphis, Tennessee, because they were staging a rally and a protest, bringing attention to the world about 1,300 sanitation workers who were on strike, who were being treated unfair in Memphis, Tennessee. The interesting story about that is that Dr. King was tired from traveling, and he tried to go to Memphis several times. However, because of inclement weather, he could not make it, but the strikers really wanted to hear from him, and he decided to go this time to deliver this speech. Many believe that this speech and the economic agenda was what led to his assassination. I'd like to highlight some of the excerpts from that. He says, now the other thing we'll have to do is this: always anchor our external direct actions with the power of economic withdrawal. He wanted to say, now we are a poor people individually. We are poor when we compare ourselves to white society in America. We are poor. Never stop to forget that collectively, that means all of us together, collectively we are richer than all the 9 nations in the world with the exception of 9. With all the nations of the world with the exception of 9. He goes on to say that the Negro collective is richer than most nations of the world. We have an annual income of more than $30 billion a year. This is back in 1968, which is more than all the exports of the United States and more than the national budget of Canada. That's power right there, if you know how to pull it. He wanted to say, we don't have to argue with anybody. We don't have to curse. We don't have to go around acting bad with our words. We don't need any bricks or bottles, and we don't need any Molotov cocktails. We just need to go around to these stores and to these massive industries in our country and say, God sent us here to say that you have not been treating his children right. And we've been here, and we come by here to ask you to make the first item on your agenda, fair treatment where God's children are concerned. Now, if you're not prepared to do that, we do have an agenda that we must follow. And our agenda calls for withdrawing economic support from you. He goes on to say, but not only that, we've got to strengthen black institutions. I call upon you to take your money out of the banks downtown and deposit your money in Tri-State Bank. We want a bank-in movement in Memphis. So go by the Savings and Loan Association. You have 6 or 7 black insurance companies in Memphis. Take out your insurance there. We want to have an insurance in. Dr. King went on to say, now these are some practical things we can do. We begin the process of building a greater economic base. At the same time, we are putting pressure where it really hurts. I asked you to follow through here. On the next day, April 4th, 1968 at 6:05, Dr. King is assassinated. Like I said, many rumored to believe that that speech was the impetus for his assassination. Now, 54 years later, after the assassination of Dr. King, there's little evidence of economic progress within the black community. Yes, we made progress in politics with the election of President Obama and the election of our Vice President, Kamala Harris. In 1968, there were no black U.S. senators. In 1965, there were no black senators or governors, and only 5 members of the House of Representatives were black. In 2022, there's 13% black House members in Congress and 3 black senators. In wealth, yes, we have a record number of black billionaires worldwide, 19 and 11 in the U.S. A record number of black millionaires, 1.79 million, 4% of the black population and 8% of the U.S. millionaire population. Our collective spending power has grown from $30 billion in 1968 to approximately $1.6 trillion in 2021 and approaching $1.8 trillion in 2024, according to Nielsen. Yes, in education, there has been a significant increase in the rates of 4-year college completion among African Americans, especially women, according to Brookings Institute. And college is not the cure for the racial wealth gap, despite the additional education that we've received. Economically, though, we're running in place. Why? Because back in 1968, black home ownership was 41.1%. Today, it's 45.3%. Black incarceration rate in 1968 was 604 per 1,000. Today, it's 2,306 per 1,000. Black unemployment rate in 1968 was 6.7%. Today, it's 5.7%. Our collective spending power in 1968 at $30 billion placed us 9th as the 9th largest economy in the world, right? Today, at $1.6 trillion, we still rank the 9th largest economy in the world. The racial wealth gap is continuing to widen. with African Americans having a median net worth of $21,400, 1/8 compared to whites whose median net worth is $189,100. The average lifespan of a dollar, according to the NAACP, is approximately 28 days in the Asian community, 19 days in the Jewish community, 17 days in the white community, and just 6 hours in the black community. So you may wonder, how does a dollar just leave our community within 6 hours? Well, just look around our communities and find out who owns all the businesses, right? And you look at how we pull up in our Mercedes-Benz, take our cleaners into the cleaners where there might be an Asian cleaners owner who don't live in our neighborhood. He goes and moves to his neighborhood, and he recycles that dollar several times. Go to the liquor stores and find out who owns the liquor stores, who owns the restaurants, who owns the grocery stores, who owns the gas stations. They take our dollar and leave it and take it out of our community. And so our communities don't have little league, they don't have all the services that they kind of had when I was growing up as a kid. We don't have those no more. Just to give you a sense of that. So I'm sure you're wondering, how could it be that 54 years of suffering, sacrificing, fighting, marching, voting, that there still is little widespread economic progress? It's my belief that since our ancestors' abduction to foreign land, not just the United States, but to the islands as well, we have been suffering from layers upon layers of intergenerational, untreated, unresolved financial trauma that has negatively impeded our ability to build wealth. Anybody agree with me on that? Yes. Well, I'll walk you down it. 1619 to 1865, upon our abduction from Africa to the foreign land, everything was taken from us. We were essentially wealth. We were wealth. In fact, one of my sponsors of the Black Wealth Summit, which is New York Life, reminded me that New York Life was founded on the idea of insuring slaves, right? They had insurance on us because we were an asset ourselves. Financial trauma, right? On January 16th, 1865, General William T. Sherman gets Field Order 15 passed by Lincoln, which sets aside land along the southeastern coast for each black family. They were doing this after the Civil War to give land to soldiers because they went to a group of preachers and said, what does your people want? And the preacher said, give us land. And so they gave us 40 acres and a mule, which was the equivalent to 40 acres of tillable land. Lincoln signed it into law. Lincoln was assassinated. President Andrew Jackson reversed the order, and the land was returned back to white Confederates. Financial trauma, 1865 to 1874. John W. Avlord, a congressional minister and an abolitionist, pulled together a group of philanthropists to establish a savings and trust bank so that soldiers who fought in the Civil War would have a place to put their money. So then blacks and soldiers put their money into Freedmen's Savings and Trust. And later on, the government voted to close the bank. African Americans lost all of their money, their little money that they put aside. More financial trauma. Reconstruction, 1861 to 1875. The sharecropper era, 1861 to the 1900s. The government attempted to reunite the divided nation and integrate African Americans into society. Sharecropping is a system where blacks worked whites' own land just enough to make enough money to feed their families, but never enough to build wealth. It wasn't that far long ago because my dad, who is 90 years old, is a son of a sharecropper and grew up sharecropping in North Carolina on tobacco fields, right? That's how they lived, right? More financial trauma, unable to build wealth. 1921, Tulsa Race Massacre. African Americans settled up to Oklahoma, started building wealth, building a way of life, building businesses. And because of a rumor of a African American man in an elevator, but supposedly, touching a young white lady, they decided to go raid our community, burn down the businesses, the stores, and everything. They just needed an excuse, I guess. More financial trauma. Redlining, 1930, ghettoizing black neighborhoods. The practice of outlining areas within a sizable black population in red ink as a sign to warn mortgage companies and insurance companies not to insure or give loans in those neighborhoods, therefore ghettoizing our neighborhoods and taking all the value out. Again, more financial trauma. Jim Crow, 1900 to 1964 and 1965. That made it legal for employers and businesses and financial and educational institutions to discriminate based on race, right? Until the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights of 1965 were passed, which were actually hallmark accomplishments of Dr. Martin Luther King's work. More financial trauma. 2007, 2008, housing and subprime loan crisis and the Great Recession, where African Americans, if you Google this, were forced into subprime loans who qualified for conforming loans because they weren't empowered enough to understand that they had a good credit score and they could get better loans and they couldn't shop for them. There were banks, one in particular, no slam against anybody, but Wells Fargo Bank, if you look it up, they were calling these things mud loans. They found, NAACP sued them and they settled for $1 billion on a no-fault suit. But there's actual, quotes of the way that they would they would code our loans, and they would force us into this. And a lot of African Americans lost homes and lost significant wealth during the 2007, 2008 subprime crisis because they put them into loans that had balloons after 2 or 3 years, and they couldn't pay the balloon payment because the financial market was collapsing, right? Again, more financial trauma. 2019, COVID-19, where many black-owned businesses were forced to close because they had to close because of COVID. Couldn't get PPP loans to keep the doors open. Again, more financial trauma. I forgot one because in 2022, I'm sure you guys heard about the appraisal debacle, right? Where African-American owned homes were appraised for significantly less than homes that were owned by white folks. And if you put a white person in the home, they would reappraise it higher. More financial trauma. And even today in 2023 in education, employment, income, credit scoring, banking, healthcare, and incarceration, and so on. So you guys see what I'm saying when I say layers upon layers upon layers of financial trauma? Well, the impact of intergenerational trauma, according to studies, the impact of childhood trauma reveals that throughout a child's adult life, they continue to suffer with self-worth, feeling enough or inadequate, self-esteem, faking it till you make it, forming authentic connections and relationships, business and personal, cognitive abilities, mindset and values, chronic health problems. Sound familiar? Does this sound like the kind of things that our community continues to suffer from? I believe that it's from this intergenerational historical trauma that we have dealt with. And now that this trauma intensifies due to the infiltration into our culture through music, places of worship, TV programming, advertising, social media, and nearly every aspect of our life, this trauma continues to play over and over again. No other community in history has had to or continues to experience this much financial trauma. Not one. Nowhere close. Nowhere close. And the media has the nerve to think that we should be closing the racial wealth gap. Think about that. I think about that. I said, the whole idea to even talk about closing the racial wealth gap makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, imagine, I've never been a runner. I can't run as fast as Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Nowhere close. I can't run as fast as Usain Bolt, but imagine if Usain Bolt and I were running the 400 one time around the lap, and he started at the halfway mark, and I started at the beginning. And to expect that I'm going to close in on him is like absurd. I'd have to run at a pace faster than him. So for us to close the racial wealth gap, that means that whites who have all the capital, all the relationships, all the knowledge, all the experience in building wealth, that somehow as a community dealing with all this trauma, then we're going to close the gap. I think that as black people, we should be measured about building wealth. We should be measuring the wealth of our growth, the growth of our wealth, as opposed to our wealth in relation to anybody else, right? That's what we should do. I think that it's kind of insulting for them to even report it. It's almost like we're playing a game of soccer and no one ever told us that we had to score goals. We thought all we had to do was kick the ball, right? And we look up and the score is like 10-1, and we're like, wait a minute, I kicked the ball more than they did. They never told us the rules of the game, so why are they measuring on it? Moving forward, our emotional response to layers of historical, untreated, unresolved financial trauma is the driving force behind our money mindset, our money values, our money priorities, and the money behaviors in the following manner. Anger for having to work much harder and being paid less, seemingly never having enough or more or just enough to survive, seemingly never getting that high-paid job, promotion, or that contract. Confusion over what to do with the money that we make, cognitive. Distrust, relationships. Distrust of our fellow brothers and sisters, the system, the establishment, and the government. Doubt, right, in everything. The stock market, the real estate, entrepreneurship, and the wealth building process as a whole. Fear of investing, losing money, or being taken advantage of financially. A study that Charles Schwab and Ariel Capital did said that what are the 3 inhibitors for African Americans to build wealth? And they said that they were available capital, financial literacy, and fear, right? That's based on their research, right? Fear, in my opinion, is the greatest impediment because it's hard to invest and to be consistent long enough to have the impact in investing when you're afraid, right? Overcompensation through materialism in order to feel worthy or good about ourselves. Wanting to be seen, respected, and by somebody. Entitlement. I'm a doctor. I'm a lawyer. I'm this. I beat the odds. I deserve to live a fabulous life. Guilt. Struggling and balancing spiritual dilemma about desiring or pursuing wealth. You've heard for the love of money is the root of all evil. You've heard it's easy for a camel to go through the eye of the needle than for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of God. Hopelessness and desperation, which impedes the patience necessary to build wealth. It often causes us to invest in false promises of quick riches and unrealistic returns. Cryptocurrency, Ponzi schemes, trying to turn $1 into $1 million. After all, we're starting from behind, so we're desperate. It's almost like you're trying to play a football game and you're saying, you know what, we're not going to go for first downs. We're not going to go for 5 yards. Every play is going to be a Hail Mary. Every time I snap the ball, we're going for the end zone. You know how many games you would lose? All of them, right? So our lack of widespread economic progress is explained by our untreated, unresolved intergenerational financial trauma that has damaged our self-esteem, our money mindset, money values, behaviors, and thus our money outcomes. I mean, how can anybody be singularly focused on building wealth when our untreated trauma has us vacillating between anger, confusion, distrust, doubt, fear, guilt, distrust, confusion, doubt, overcompensation, entitlement, guilt, and hopelessness and despair? How can you focus on investing like that? Think about it. How could you be consistent enough to make any differences? I mean, look at the other communities that don't have that baggage. They don't have that trauma, right? With $1.8 trillion in spending power, 19 billionaires, 1.79 millionaires, blacks achieving higher levels of education, access to financial literacy, resources at the tip of our fingers, on our phones, via the internet. The only thing that's hindering us, I believe, is our mindset, our desire, our will. I give you an example of my grandmother who settled from Danville, Virginia, up to New York City, worked at a cleaner's, and she made $200 a month. This is back in the 50s. $200 a month for the rest of her life. By the time my grandmother died, she paid off her $25,000 house in the Bronx. She paid off her Volkswagen Jetta. She saved $43,000 in her savings account, of which $13,000 covered her funeral expenses, and the other $30,000 went to her 3 grandchildren. She gave the house to my grandfather, she married, and I turned her $10,000 into millions. This is back in 1993. So you wonder, how in the world can a grandmother who probably didn't even have a 6th grade education at the time, how could she do that? Anybody have an idea? She didn't have the money. She had the mindset. She had the values around money. She had the desire and the will. Now, yeah, she didn't take any financial literacy classes. You can see people on the internet trying to say, buy my class. I'm going to teach you to do this. They haven't done it, but they're going to teach you how to do it. Right? We don't need a class in financial literacy. The information is sitting right there. I put it in a book for $34. Right? My grandmother had will, desire. She had a millionaire mindset. She had millionaire values. Now, she probably could have took a class and turned the $43,000 into $430,000. But because of her fear and her lack of knowledge, all she wanted to do was save and retire, and she retired well until she died. So it's really about the mindset. It is with that understanding of intergenerational, unrelated, untreated financial trauma that I wrote my book, Why Should White Guys Have All the Wealth? So now I want to talk about how to ignite and take ownership of your personal wealth journey. You guys are awfully quiet. Am I boring you? You guys falling asleep? Is this resonating? Yes. Thank you. The first step is radical acceptance, right? No one's coming to save us. Where we are financially as black people is not our fault, but it's our responsibility to fix it. No one else can, nor will they. We have to accept that, right? The government's not coming. They're never going to make the game fair. They're never going to give us our rightfully due reparations. We can no longer wait for them to do it. While we've been waiting, they've been taking all the land, all the opportunities, everything. We're waiting for the government to do that. We're also waiting for Jesus to send us a financial blessing that's going to fix it. And there's nothing against Jesus. This is just that's just not his business, right? His business is salvation, right? His business is to help everybody, not just us as black people, right? So we can no longer wait. Our solution lies in controlling that which we have control over, which is how much we earn and what we do with what we earn. That's where our solution lies. We have what it takes to flip the script and win. With $1.8 trillion in spending power, and by dedicating a portion of the spending power into investment power, we have enough financial resources internally to completely transform our communities. Just think about it. If you look at, none of the African countries in Africa are generating $1.8 trillion in spending power. None of them. The interesting thing about this, and the reason why I started with Dr. Martin Luther King, is because this blueprint is not my blueprint. This is what he was working on back in 1968. He was trying to get us to invest back into our own businesses and build our own economy and leverage the resources that we already had collectively. And that's why I read that, because I wanted you guys to understand that we have enough resources within our own community. The only thing that's holding us back is this untreated trauma, right? Not dealing with this untreated trauma. Radical acceptance. Partnering is key. We have to unlearn the idea that we can't partner together and work together to begin the process of healing and learning how to partner regardless of how challenging it may be. And I say that because we all know that if we hire a black person to do something and they mess us up, then we say we don't want to do business with black people, right? And we avoid it. The whole point is we were taught to distrust one another, right? So we have to learn how to trust. And that process takes time. Anybody been in a marriage relationship and they say when you want to rebuild trust, it doesn't happen overnight. And there are bumps along the road to make that happen. So we have to learn how to be compassionate when things don't go the right way, but stay committed to the process. An interesting story, I own property in Jersey City, and I was going to court. I call it shakedown court, because if you got cracked paint, they fine you. So I'm going to court, and this Hasidic Jew guy, young kid, is walking up going to court with me. I always take an opportunity to talk to them, because it's always interesting to see their mindset. And so I asked him, I said, we were talking about properties, and he knew one of my buildings because they've been sending me texts trying to buy one of my buildings. I'm like, I'm not selling my building. It's going to my kids. No way in the world. But we were talking, and he said, I said, you guys, I said, where do you guys get your capital for your businesses or for your real estate? He gets it in the synagogue. This kid was like 25 years old and owned like 8 buildings. And he got the money from the synagogue. The members of the synagogue pulled their capital together, and they invested. I said, will you ever have anybody take advantage of you or screw you over? He says, yes. I said, what do you do? He says, we just don't do business with him. So they don't stop doing business together. They just say, if you're a bad apple, we're not going to deal with a bad apple. And so the whole point is I look at our churches as being very, very strong economic basis. We build schools, credit unions, we build, everything. Apartment buildings, communities for free. We have expertise in our churches. I look at some of the churches. I'm from Maryland. They got these big, huge mega churches that own acres upon acres of land. And what's really interesting is that they're professionals who are construction people and accountants and IT people and lawyers that come together for the church to build these syndications for the church. I'm saying, why can't we do both? Why can't we do God's work and do our work too? The reality is we can. It's just about mindset. We trust the church, but we have to learn how to trust each other. So, sorry to get on my soapbox, but the racial wealth gap cannot and must not widen. We've got to narrow it 1 millionaire at a time. And I'll tell you guys why I put so much emphasis on millionaire. It's not about bragging rights. It's not about, I'll show you why it's critical. The other thing is we must use all available resources, money, influence, and the power of our vote to fight and claw for equality in order to make the needed changes in our community. I know a lot of people sometimes don't want to vote when it's inconvenient or when it's raining, but I am telling you, our vote matters. Our vote is the deciding vote. When we want to vote, the reason why Biden is president today is because of the black vote. Hands down. It's true. Yeah. I guess y'all don't believe me. The reason why Barack Obama was president because of the black vote. The reason why Donald Trump won is because we did not vote. Just look at the numbers. In states or cities where Donald Trump won, he did worse than Romney, and Hillary Clinton did worse than Obama. That's why he won in those battleground states. Right? And we've got another DeSantis guy that we need to do everything we can possible to make sure that he doesn't get into the White House. We've got to vote. I tell my Republican friends, I got a lot of Republican friends, and I laugh and joke with them all the time. I said, you guys are not that smart. Because if you want to win, do not piss off the black folks. Keep us asleep. But when you do crazy stuff like DeSantis is doing, we rise up. The reality is we have to rise up regardless. Right? We have to rise up regardless. So our vote matters. And we can no longer wait for Jesus or wait for the government to give us a financial blessing for our economic process. We have what it takes to do it ourselves. So it's with that my wealth system is based on. My Millionaire Money Move system is based on 3 principles. Developing a millionaire mindset, the offense. Adopting millionaire values, the defense. And making what I call millionaire money moves, which is the playbook. Right? I call this millionaire or millionaire. Which one are you? Which one will you become? Why? Because millionaires, all they do is earn, they pay, they consume, and they give. It's all they do. They continue to do that. They get a paycheck, they pay their bills. Pay is like your mandatory bills. They consume discretionary things that they don't have to have, and then they give away. If you look at the definition of consume, it's to use until it's no more. And that means that when you're consuming something, you're just really just throwing the money away. The Millionaire Money Moves principle is around these 8 principles, which starts with planning, earning, saving, paying what's required, consuming, we all consume, investing regularly, consistently, every day, every paycheck. Not every day, but every paycheck, every month. Until those investments start generating income that adds to what you earn. And it goes to rewarding, so you reward yourself based on hitting certain milestones. Yes, I like nice things too. You see me in a Ferrari, you see me in all that kind of stuff, but it's always tied to an asset. It's always tied to a goal, right? I don't just buy it just because. And once you buy them enough, Steve knows this. He had a night, what year was that Porsche? But once you buy enough of them, you realize they're not even all that exciting. But the whole point is, I tie them to rewards and then giving, because I think giving is very important. Hugh was laughing with his Aston Martin sitting out front. So within that circle is value transformation and mindset transformation. And so it's because you're investing that your net worth goes up on a regular basis. So that's the basis of my system. To build wealth, all you have to do is invest in assets that appreciate. It's really that simple. You keep buying assets, they have a way of always going up. All right? So basically, if I look at mindset, if I look at really what you have to master, the 5 things you have to master, it's really the mindset, planning, investment intensity, investment consistency, and time. And I'll be out of here quickly. But our mindset is our preconceived ideas, beliefs, and practices. Often what you'll find is your mindset is based on what somebody you respected told you. It wasn't anything that you researched or discovered. I want to show of hands real quick. I want you guys to be real honest. How many people told you, or mentors or people who you respected says, oh, don't buy no rental property. All they're going to do is tear up your property. Please raise your hand. Yeah. Have you heard that before? Tell Mr. Schwartz or Mr. Bernstein that. He said, I love that problem. I'll take that problem all day. And so now if you look at how in 2021 rates, our rental rates were going up 24% on average right here in Tampa alone. How many people wish they owned rental property? You get what I'm saying? That's the mindset thing. Our mindset gets cemented the wrong way. Money values. Money values are how you treat money. Do I treat it like a toy or do I treat it like a tool? Right? Should be treated like a tool to make more money, not a toy to be played with, right? That's how you value it. That's how you looked at it. My grandmother valued it. She didn't want to, it's not worshiping it. I'm not saying worship money and hoard it. It's about saying, am I getting adequate value for what I'm giving away? Right? Is buying that $350 Gucci belt going to really add that much value to me? Or would I rather buy 1 share of Berkshire Hathaway B, which I bought at $70 a share and is trading at close to $300 a share now, even after the dip, right? So it's really about making those kinds of choices. Then there's effort. You don't have to read this slide, but effort is measured not in how many hours you work or how much time you put in. It's really measured in the amount of time necessary to get the desired result. So the reason why effort is here is because there's not a person. I mean, Steve worked as an executive across many companies. Anybody that makes a lot of money, they're going to put a lot of effort in it. A lot of effort, a lot of personal effort. Marquez's dad is here. These boys work hard. Football players, right? They sacrifice their time. Do you know, usually 2 or 3 days before the game, they're locked into the hotel. Just sitting there. I mean, traveling all over the place, very little personal time. You're going to give up personal time. If you want to build wealth, you have to be willing to put in effort. I'm not talking about 9 to 5. I'm talking about until the job gets done. Sacrifice. Sacrifice is, I call one part pain, 1 part perseverance. Because when you're sacrificing, you're kind of in pain. And you've got to be able to do that over a sustained period of time. If you don't, you're not really sacrificing. You've got to be able to do without, do with less. And then patience. It takes time to build wealth. I mean, I tell people all the time on social media, becoming a millionaire isn't hard. It's just slow. Very slow. And so the whole point is that if your stock doesn't go up after 2 days, or even after 6 months, or even after 1 year, that's not patience, right? You've got to be patient. And then emotional control, one of the most powerful things there. You know what emotional control is? This is the hardest thing to balance. It's because our lives are constantly balancing between fear and desire. So you get a windfall of money. All of a sudden, desire starts creeping up. You start thinking of all the things you can buy, right? Then all of a sudden, your money's gone because you spent it, And now you're afraid because you need more money. So the name of the game with emotional control is you have to be able to keep your emotions in balance regardless of where you are in the process. If you can't build wealth because all the money that you need to invest in, you're going to end up spending it. So these are the key components of your mindset that you have to master. There's additional ones as well, but these are the ones I highlight. So my Millionaire Money Moves Power budget. I tell people that planning is very, very key to building wealth, and part of that is your budgeting process. A lot of us, I create a system for the 99%, not the 1%. The 1% are the highly connected and the highly compensated. So they have loads of cash to potentially invest and make up the time. But most of us have to go paycheck to paycheck. And when I started my first job as a software engineer making $36,400 a year, I wanted to emulate what my mentors did. And so I started creating my plan at a college and say, how do I turn this $36,400 a year into assets that pay for my lifestyle? And so with that is what I created the system with. So budgeting is important. Now some people say, how can I budget? How can I save 30% of my income? Most of us can't initially because we're strapped. And my assumption are that I'm coming to people that are financially strapped and they don't have any room to save or invest. That's where effort comes in. Got to find a way to make more income. If it's a side hustle, freelance, right? Because your main hustle, which is your job, plus your side hustle, has to create the income that you put into your investment hustle so that one day your investment hustle does all the work. And it takes time to get there. And that's what my system is about. It's about turbocharging your investment hustle, whether it's stocks, real estate, entrepreneurship, or whatever. Anybody heard of the SMART planning system? I'm not going to go through that, but this is how you plan. I'm going to show you this plan right here. This is the plan I wrote back in 1990 coming out of college, right? So this stuff has been brewing with me since college. So 2 days before graduation, like a lot of us graduate from college and we're like, okay, I'm graduating, I got a job, but what else? What now? This is not where I want, this can't be the end all be all. So I created this plan. And so I show this plan because it's kind of interesting because, planning is like miraculous what happens. Because what you do is when you plan and you write it down, you're programming your subconscious. And your subconscious informs your conscious. And then when you run across an opportunity, you act on it and you don't even know it. If you look at what marketers are doing to keep you spending, they're communicating to your subconscious. Coca-Cola is constantly advertising, not because you're going to buy a Coca-Cola right now, is because when you get to that counter, you're going to be thinking about Coca-Cola. Anybody see that movie with Will Smith and when he was he was a hustler with the young lady, and the guy told him I could bet you $1 million I could guess the number that you're thinking, and you know what he did? He kept putting that number all over the place. The guy kept seeing the number. He was programming his subconscious. Because the guy kept seeing that number again, he called that number again. That's what marketers do to keep us spending. They make us feel like we need their stuff in order to feel adequate. And they're really talking to us because they know that we've been dealing with untreated trauma and that we're susceptible to those types of things. Right? That's why we have $1.8 trillion in spending power. They're measuring how much power we have to spend. Right? So this was my first plan. And the funny part about this, just one thing I'm going to tell you about this, is that I got married right out of college. And I even planned when I wanted to have my first child and my second child. And I was just kind of that intense. Right? And so I didn't have my first child in 1996, but I did have twins in 1997. It's freaky. I'm telling you, if you don't plan, you will not hit your goals. If you don't define your goals, set them out front. Steve, are you a planner? I'm sure you are. Compulsive, right? This is how I do it now, and this is how I talk about it in the book. You got to plan your income, your net worth growth, what you earn, what you save, what you pay, what you invest, how you're going to reward yourself, how you're going to give back, and any of your personal goals. I put this in the book, and all these templates are available on my website at cedricnash.com. You can download it for free. I do most of what I'm doing here for free. I'm not doing this for money, right? Investment intensity, right? Investment intensity is the percentage of your income that you invest. That's why I want you to save 30%. We have an expert financial advisor here, Preston from Raymond James. So, I mean, if I'm wrong, please sit me down. But you got to invest. What I mean is it's the percentage of your investment. I'll give you a quick example. You can't invest $1,000 in Gucci and put $100 in your portfolio and think that you're going to make a dent. You got to do it the other way around. You got to put $100 in Gucci and save it up until you can buy that Gucci belt and put $1,000 in your portfolio. What happens is a lot of people are thinking that they're setting themselves up for retirement, but they don't really know that number. They're just saying, well, I'm putting money in my 401k and I am, saving a few dollars, but it's just not enough. And I'll show you why, right? This other slide is one of my favorite slides. It's called investment consistency. Every paycheck, every month, every year, constantly, for the rest of your life. Because what you're doing is you're building up an asset like a snowball. And the objective is to live off the shavings of that snowball, which would be the income that it creates. And then what you're going to do is you're going to pass that snowball, or before you do that, you're going to teach your kids how to build a snowball, right? And how to take the snowball further. And then when you move on, you're going to pass that snowball to your kids, and they're going to live off the shavings and make the snowball bigger. And then they're going to teach their kids how to grow the snowball and live off the shavings of the snowball so they can pass it to the next generation. That's generational wealth. It's not about the sum of money. My grandmother at $200 a month created generational wealth by just that $10,000. Because now I have millions to pass to my kids, but at the same time, I'm teaching them how to be responsible and what to do with it, right? That's generational wealth. It's not about the amount of money. It's really about the education that you pass on to the next generation. So this right here is my investment consistency, because I found often, you probably may not be able to see that, and this is how you go from zero to millions. It's like the goal is to get to $1,000 and invest in index funds, ETFs, mutual funds, stocks, bonds, and savings. That's what you can do with your first 1,000. You get your savings up to 25,000, 25 to 50. Now you can look at single family homes, index funds, ETFs, mutual funds. And then it goes on up to level 7 when you could start investing in alternative investments like private equity and private businesses. You can start a business probably at a level 6 when you have 250,000 to 600,000. The reason why I did this is that sometimes people don't have a framework for what they're doing with their money, what they're doing with their paycheck, and they need a goal. And so I created this as a way, as a guideline for people to understand and to keep focus on building their capital up so they can get focused on investing. So with this, no matter how little money you have, you can always invest. And how this worked for me before is a friend of mine was going to invest in a buddy's private equity business, a private equity fund. He's creating a private equity fund. She wasn't a accredited investor, but she wanted to put $50,000 into my friend's fund. And she says, what do you think? Should I do it? Well, I pulled this out. I said, so where are you on this chart? She says, oh, I'm really a level 3. So you're a level 3 and you want to do a level 7 investment. So if it doesn't work, where are you going to end up? Starting at the bottom again. So it was so clear to her. She says, wow, this was so helpful. Because what happens is if you get to level 7, and now you do an alternative investment and it doesn't work out because they're extremely risky, that's why you have to be an alternative investor or an accredited investor. You just go back to a level 6 and build back up again. So this turned out to be a really good guide. So the whole point is to invest consistently. Final thing is time. Time is important. Let me show you why time matters. If you invested $500 for 43 years per month and you started at 22, 43 years later you'd have $3.5 million. If you started at 32, that same $500, you'd be at 1.3 million. If you started at 42, you'd have 477,000. If you started at 52, you'd have 147,000. If you started at 62, you'd have 19,000. The whole point is compounding is on your side. Now, for those of you who might be afraid of what I'm telling you because of the reality of what I'm saying, I do have another book I'm working on, and it's titled How to Become a Millionaire Starting at 50. Because when you're older, there's a whole different strategy that you have to take because compounding doesn't work for you. So you have to take a different approach. So that kind of concludes what I had to share with you. You guys are awfully quiet and you're scaring me. I don't know if I don't know if what I said resonates with you, or if it was relatable. If you guys think that it was relatable, can you basically give
At least nod something, anything. What's up? Come on now.
So we're going to take some questions.
So, Cedric, as we get ready to take these questions, and feel free, anyone want to kind of stand up and stretch out a little bit. It's all good. But before we take questions, I want you to answer this, because and by the way, my mom is actually here in the audience. Stand up, Mom. My mom's here tonight, making sure. Got to take care of the house cleaning, She called me and said, "Baby, I was there. You didn't even mention me." So my mom's here. So, Cedric, the question I want you all, I want you to address before we take questions quickly and we got desserts, is how important is it for every single one in here to become a millionaire? Because our parents are living a lot older, and it's getting a lot more expensive to take care of them when we're talking about their medical needs and all of that. What's happening is I'm talking to so many individuals and they're stressed and they're saying, wow, I thought that my husband and my income would cover my kids. I didn't think about my parents.
Right. First of all these slides and pictures and all that, they're in the book. Like I said, you can download them and I explain them in detail. But I do have a couple of slides. Why you're going to need to be to have millions to even be financially comfortable or independent. Some people don't know that. And one of the things that I'm going around the country to spread is that often we don't achieve a particular goal because no one told us that we had to do it. No one told it or explained to us that it was important and why it was important. So I'm 58, and most of the people in my generation, in my mind, and Preston and Steve, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, they're going to need anywhere between $3 to $5 million in cash if they have no pension, if they have no Social Security, in order to retire comfortably. Not rich. I'm talking about comfortably. Am I wrong, Preston? No. Preston's a personal financial advisor for Raymond James. He deals with this all the time. So they need $3 to $5 million. Now, kids, like my kids are in their 20s. Like my kids are 26, 25. You know what number I'm telling them they need to hit? 10. They need to hit 10. So imagine if you come out of college knowing that you got to get to 10 at 22. And you can do that. You can get to 3.5 million by putting $500 a month for 43 years, working from 22 to 65, right? With compounding. Because the market average about 10% a year, compounding every year, you can get to that number. So the thing I'm trying to do is kind of set that in their minds. And that's why I've got a series of books written for couples, for people starting at 50. The one I've written for college graduates is already written. I haven't published it yet, but trying to get college students to develop a plan like I did coming out of college. Right? This is a passion of mine. So I just want to add this one thing, that anybody heard about the 4% rule?
Yes.
Yeah. So if you had $1 million, the 4% rule says that the market at the time was averaging about 6%. If you average 6%, adjusted for inflation, which is about 2.5%, that all your money in the market, you could take 4% of your 401k or your money, or I call it your freedom fund, all your money. You could take that out and it should last you 30 to 40 years. And you could adjust that for inflation. So if you had $1 million, let's see the math majors in here. If you had $1 million in your account, annually, how much could you take out to live on to make it last? $40,000. How many people can retire and live comfortably off of $40,000? Most of us won't have our house paid for because we didn't buy our final house at the age of 30, right? So if you had $2 million, you'd have how much? 80,000. That's getting closer. Some could retire off of 80. And if you have a pension, or if you have Social Security, or if you have, an annuity or something, that could help. So if you had $3 million, you could do 120,000, right? The interesting thing about it is that would be today. If you're retiring 10 years from now, and if you look at the time value of money 10 years from now, the number's even higher. Yes. So when I tell you that you have to invest every paycheck, every month. Put money aside for you, not for Bernard Chenault. You guys know who Bernard Chenault is? This guy owns all the luxury brands, Dior, Louis Vuitton, Hennessy. He owns all the black brands.
Right.
Hennessy, Dom Perignon, Moet Chandon, Tiffany's. All those brands fall up under a stock called LVMH. And he hovers back and forth as the richest man in the world. Like Dior, all of them. The funny thing about it is during COVID, do you know that his net worth grew by $100 billion? Do you know that that's when our net worth, our spending power trended towards 1.6 trillion? Do you know what our net worth did? Went down 14%, according to CNBC. Because we were buying things that did not hold value or did not go up in value. So we're making him richer and we're making ourselves poorer. The sad reality about this is mindset is so important because if they gave us our duly right reparations, which they can figure this out. There's a lot of smart guys who can figure out the future value of 40 acres and a mule. They can figure that out. If they gave it to us with our current mindset, who would win?
They would. Transparent.
Right. That's why the problem is not money. The problem is not literacy. The problem is desire and will and mindset. And I just happen to be fortunately blessed to have 4 millionaire mentors, 3 black, 1 white, that poured into me a different way. And so I'm here to share that with you. So that's why, that's why it's going to take millions. The reality is, don't be afraid of it. Embrace it. Just come up with a plan. And I wrote a book to help you get there. So that's it.
Quick question. I heard you mention your children. I was fortunate to have a father that mentioned real estate to me at an early age. I bought my first piece of property at 20. How do we get young kids in the 20s to 30s to not want to sell a house that they've been given by grandma?
Right.
Come on now, bring it.
Yep. It's funny because you say that, but I do own my grandmother's house in the Bronx. That house, it was funny because the guy didn't want me to buy it. The estate planner was like, oh, you should just let this thing go. It's because my grandfather took a reverse mortgage out. And by the time I was able to get it, it ran up to about 400 and something thousand. But because I knew my grandmother's values and the fact that it was important to her, I couldn't let that happen. So I bought the house. The house is worth $700,000 today.
Wow.
I was able to buy it for 95% of the value. So when you have a probate sale like that, they allow you to buy it for 95% of its value. So they got it appraised, and then you had to buy it. But often because of our money values and how we're treating our money, we're not in a position to buy grandmother's house. And then the white investors get it, and they would have made the $700,000. That's another thing that contributes to the racial wealth gap. So what I'm trying to really do is kind of cement a different mindset so we are empowered. Like I'm talking to some NFL players because I'm not trying to manage their money. That's for Preston to do. I'm trying to empower them so they can check Preston. Make sure Preston's doing right by them.
All right.
Right? That's all I'm trying to do. So,
Good stuff.
but the key is mindset, right? Teach them the right mindset. And and James Baldwin has a favorite saying. He says, I had a very difficult time teaching kids what to do, but they never fail to mimic what I do. Right? So a lot of times our actions are being viewed by our kids. And my kids, I didn't really teach them much because I was divorced, but they spent a lot of time with me, but they watched me. And so they developed the same kind of mindset and attitude towards money. They never got into that Nike thing. I'm staying outside all night to get a pair of Nikes. They didn't really care what kind of tennis shoes they were wearing. Yeah.
Good stuff. Go ahead.
All right, thank you, Cedric. This was amazing. My name is James Hill. I own a company called Black Millionaires.
You own a company called what?
Black Millionaires.
All right, I love it.
So it's a media company. We reach millions of people, and we allow Cedric to come on and teach a lot of our audience because our audience is really interested in business, entrepreneurship, investing, and he does a great job at explaining to our audience how we could actually build a plan to build wealth. My question was, I don't know if you can get the slide back up, but it was on the levels.
Right.
So one of the things that I hear from my audience a lot is, and me and you kind of talked about this, is entrepreneurship. So I personally, and I'm from the east side of Detroit, We grew up very poor, and I'm doing everything I can to make sure my children don't grow up the same way I grew up. Everybody that I knew that was financially free, they got it through starting a business, right? So my question to you is, at level 1, when we're saving, and then level 2, the index funds, level 3, the house, entrepreneurship is at level 6. So it confuses me and my audience when they see the entrepreneurs and people who own businesses, and we preach that and say, well, we need to own the liquor stores, we need to own this and own that. But then we got to get 500, 600, 250,000 to even start a business.
Right.
And then now, with me being 28, I can start a business on Shopify or one of these platforms and get started and get going with almost basically no money. I mean, it's $500-$600 is literally no money to start a business now today. So my question to you is, when does entrepreneurship become flexible on the levels, and when should we start to prioritize?
That's an excellent question. The reality is these are not absolutes, right? These are frameworks and for things to think about. But when I wrote in my other book, The Millionaire Money Moves Supplemental Investment Guide, I have a chapter on entrepreneurship. And depending on the kind of business that you decide to start, that's going to determine how much capital you really need. But what people often fail to do, and Hugh can chime in on this, is that they don't figure that they got to pay themselves while they're starting a business, right? And so if you're already making $60,000 or $80,000, you've got to pay yourself while you have capital to start the business. And so if you're somewhat younger and you can kind of live with a homeboy or live at home, yeah, your costs are going to vary a lot differently. And then the other thing is that the kind of businesses, interesting statistic. Do you know that within the United States there are 2 million black-owned businesses? 2 million. We're opening them at a record pace. You know how many of them have employees? 124,000. So there's a lot of LLCs, but there's not a lot of employees, right? So it depends on the level of business and the type of business that you're talking about. And often, if you look at the statistics, 50% of businesses fail within the first 5 years and another 70% within the 10 years. So the whole point is like often if you wonder why did they fail, it was lack of capital. So my thing is I advise people that if you're going to open a business, open it planning to succeed. It's better to wait and have the right amount of capital to get your business up and running than it is to get started and waste capital because you didn't have enough capital to get it up and running. Because now you got to build that capital up again. So it's going to vary, and it's not an absolute. The other piece is, to my story, is that I saved money to start my business, but I also started freelancing as a consultant, so I was able to make 3 times my normal salary, live off my salary, and then the extra money I was able to save and bring more consultants on until I built my business up to 300 employees and 90 million in revenue. So I just did it slowly. And like I said, that's another mindset thing. Don't be afraid of building wealth slow. The reality is everybody does. Just doesn't look like it.
Good stuff.
My name is Joel Sylvain. I'm with New York Life, a company that you keep. My question to you in regards to generational wealth is, what are your thoughts on the baby boomers, the grandparents, and the grandchildren being able to do business together, being able to have discussions where you build your small version of a family office and sharing those principles? What are your thoughts on that?
That must happen. I mean, you have to talk. That's why we created the Black Wealth Summit. We want to bring families. We had little kids there. Or not little kids, we had teenagers there, and they were investing in stocks. The whole concept of the Black Wealth Summit is really to inspire black wealth development and to give them authentic information. There's a lot of other people out there that are giving conferences, but our conferences are, the sessions are led by certified financial advisors that would get sued for teaching you wrong. And they're black and they have an invested interest. They're not all black, but they're mostly black. They have a vested interest in telling you the truth. So that's why we created it, because a lot of times we have a lot of investment anxiety and fear and confusion because there's over 5, 6, I don't know how many securities on the stock exchange. There's like thousands of them. You don't know what to pick. You don't know how to do it. I try to narrow down in my book to make it very simple because it's really not that complicated when you follow Warren Buffett's approach, which is high quality company. But the reality is, generational wealth it's really more about the mindset. One interesting thing about it is that I have a guy who works for me, former partner at Accenture. He's got enough money to not work for me, and he jokes at me because he says he makes more income off his dividends than I pay him, right? So we're friends now. He's a former partner of Accenture and got loads of money from stock from Accenture. And so I asked him one day, we were driving, I said, did your dad ever teach you about money? Because he's really good about his money. And he says, no. He says, my dad really didn't have that much money. Because a lot of us think that white people sit their kids down and explain to them about money. And so what I recognize, he says, no, it's really the very wealthy white people who are going to pass lots of money to their kids that sit them down and tell them about money so that they'll know how to manage that money appropriately. But the rest of us don't. I said, well, how do they seem from our perspective so good with money? And I'll tell you the reason why. It's because their family values around money is a little different. They don't care about wearing Gucci and Prada, right? You know who the guy is who buys the least amount of Gucci, Louis Vuitton, and all that stuff? It's white males.
Yes.
They don't give a damn about that. I'm sorry, they don't care about looking fancy or wearing jewelry, or they may have a nice car. They'll definitely have an incredible house and a yacht. But they don't care about where it lands in.
Right.
They just want something quality that makes them feel good. They're the least guy to market to. So the whole point is it's all about mindset. So these kids grow up seeing their parents living conservatively, living frugally, saving and investing on a regular basis, right? Buying a nice house. So they're learning these money values and these money mindset, which is the most important piece of it. Now the funny part is my dad was born poor and he was very conservative. We always lived in nice houses, went to church, wore nice clothes. But when I talk about how that mindset is infiltrating our culture through music, through social media, you could come from that house. But if you're black and you're listening and you're experiencing the black experience, somehow that bling bling is going to emerge up inside of you. It just is. It's part of our culture. And that's why it's so hard to fight and push it down. Because you look like a square if you're not wearing the latest thing. Right? And you can't get the cutest chick unless you're wearing the flyest thing.
Hello.
It's I'm dead serious. I'm just saying it is immersed in our culture. And that's why from 1968 to now we're not seeing major economic movement. So, sorry for being so long-winded, but
You good?
Thank you, Cedric. Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael McNeil, and me and my business partner have Senior Consolidated Planning and Consulting, formerly from New York Life. But I wanted to get your perspective on where life insurance, properly structured life insurance, falls within the overall plan, and how powerful that is as a foundation, because if nothing else, and there should be, but if nothing else, what should be passed on? Because that's one of the biggest challenges that I have, and especially in our community, in not only getting it, but keeping it no matter what. So if you would please.
yeah, that's a great question. There's a lot of conversation on social media, and James has been like my social media mentor, getting my followers up and stuff, because I said I'm old, and it's a young man's game. But insurance fits in my pay thing. It's a requirement. You should have insurance. You must have insurance. But and some insurance guys aren't going to like what I'm going to say. But I don't believe in being overly insured. And often insurance is sold as an asset. It's a defense. It's not an offense. And so what happens is so you have to have insurance and you got to invest, right? Because a lot of times it's sold as you got to have, it's a generational wealth thing, because if you have this big insurance thing for $1 million, now you're passing that on to your kids and you don't ever have to save and invest and own in real estate. That's how it's often sold, right? My thing is it's an important thing and you should have insurance, right? But you need to invest in other assets, right? You have to invest in other assets, because if you're investing just for you to die, that's no fun. You should be investing to live, right? I've been investing in properties. I got a property that's paid for in October 2023 in New Jersey. That's the one the Jewish guys want all the time. It's paid for 20 years. I planned on that to be income in retirement, right? I'm going to tear it down and rebuild a bigger building, 12 units, rooftop apartment for myself and stores at the bottom. So the whole point is like, you can enjoy your assets. You don't have to wait until you die for somebody else to join them. So I do believe that insurance is important. But the way I believe it's being presented on the internet is if you can get insurance and never have to save, and your generational wealth is all done. And the final thing I'm going to tell you, that if you don't teach your kids how to manage it, all they're going to do is take that money and spend it, and your family's generational wealth goes back to zero. And that's what's happening. People are getting grandmother's house, and because they didn't take care of their financial situation, now they're going to buy Gucci and Prada and traveling on that money their grandmother died. I couldn't do that. That's a disgrace. Right? Older generation was more conservative. They build up some wealth. You've heard of somebody got 4 or 5 houses their grandfather had, one for each kid. He's thinking he's doing something. They sell it, and then they basically go buy some stuff. And now the family's wealth gone to zero. That's what's holding the racial wealth gap down. We're not holding on to assets.
Well said.
Good evening. When you were giving sort of like the timeline as far as our wealth is concerned, you touched on during the period of COVID 2019. And during that time, we saw an increase of assets going into black banks. Because what we realized, especially amongst the elite, the black elite, that banks were not loaning, they were not helping black businesses, they were not free with their PPP loans and things of that nature. Where do the black institutions, the black bank institutions fit in this plan? And are they still relevant to us when it comes to investment?
It's an awesome question.
All right.
It's an awesome question. And it's also, I think, a very complicated one. And the reason why I say it's very complicated is that I do believe that we should support our black banks, and our black banks should support us. But I really think that there is a communication problem between the black community and the banking system in general. It's like a lot of times we look at the bank as if they're venture capitalists, like they invest in businesses off of a napkin. And they don't. Banks will invest in you if you have a strong balance sheet with 3 years and a solid cash flow that you're basically making profit on a regular basis. Banks take no risk at all. Zero. They may do for the big risk, super rich guys, but for most businesses, they take zero risk. And so I'm saying that because we have a misunderstanding that I applied and the bank didn't approve me. Often it's because we're not understanding how the bank works. I work with the bank and I work with them well, extremely well, right? Because I understand that they're a facilitator of what you're trying to get accomplished. So as it relates to black-owned banks, Robert Smith has an incredible plan. Robert Smith is the richest black man in America, worth over $6 billion. And his plan was he thinks every corporation, he's a righteous brother because he's an alpha, not a kappa like you. But he's an alpha like me. So the whole point of his plan is the corporate America should take 2% of their revenue and give it to black banks in hopes that the black banks will fund black businesses in the black community. The challenge is a lot of our businesses in our community are not strong enough and they're not bankable. So it creates this really, really kind of catch-22 situation. So the banks want to lend because that's how they make money. They make money off lending, and they got a whole lot of money from the big banks, billions of dollars, to go to the community and loan. We've got to strengthen our businesses. And so just a quick word about that. So often we say, we don't support black businesses. Me and James argue about this from time to time. You know what my answer is? Black businesses don't support black people.
Amen.
That's the problem.
Amen.
Because the whole point of the objective of a business is to meet a need, right? At the right price, the right level of service, right? The right product. And so the whole point is that a lot of times we're trying to convince black people to wear dashikis when they want to wear Gucci. If we're wearing Gucci, we got to figure out a way to sell them Gucci. You got to meet the customer's needs. We can't make them want our product. We have to understand what they want and deliver it to them. And if you look at our neighborhoods, we buy gas, liquor, food, we buy cleaning services. We buy it all the time. All you got to do is provide that need at a competitive price and at a competitive level of service, and you'll have plenty of money from the black community. We want to support our black businesses, but our black businesses have to support us too. So when you think about the kind of business that you're creating, restaurants or the whole 9 yards, you have to compete. And what I mean by compete is that you have to provide your services at a level that we're expecting, or that we want, or that we demand. And I think you get all the support of our, that you can imagine.
Hello, thank you. My name is Consuela Mackey Perry. I want to first say, amazing, very informative.
What?
Amazing.
Thank you.
This helped me out a lot because you never know what people go through, and you opened me up to receiving what I needed tonight. But for the question with the guy from New York Life, my biggest concern is, when do you start educating the youth? Because that's where the change is really going to take place. What age would you say?
From the moment that they can talk.
I figured that.
In terms of like allowances, about, you see, what you really want to teach, you don't necessarily need to teach them about money. You need to teach them about mindset. It's like, oh, do you want this or do you want that? Or you can spend after you save up to this level, right? It's these, I had David Gardner, the founder. Anybody heard of the Motley Fool?
Yes.
Yeah, he's a friend of mine. He spoke at the Black Wealth Summit, and he talked about, he's been investing for a lot of years, and he's quietly worth over $400 million. And he's just a nice, happy-go-lucky guy, majored in English, and him and his brother created this incredible business, and he stepped away from the business. But I asked him on the stage, when did he first start investing and how did he do it? And he was telling the audience that his father would take them to the grocery store, and he would make every item on there that they liked, he would talk to them about their stock. And he loved chocolate pudding. So the kids started investing in chocolate pudding. So that was a lesson of investing in products that you like, that you believe, that you trust in. So the whole point is that this stuck with him years later. David's like 54 years old, and he's done extremely well. The point is that every moment is a teaching moment with your kid. And you can learn yourself. Right? As you learn, you can accept. So it's really that mindset about, do you really want this or do you really want that? Is that really a good use of your money, or is this a better use of your money? Right? Those are the kind of things. Teach them to start working early. Steve came to my house one day. I had my kids making money hanging people's coats up, right? Remember that, Steve? Right? They were checking coats at my party, getting tips. They were little teenagers, right? Next.
I hope everybody can hear me. This is a pretty small room, so I don't necessarily want to use this. It'll be too loud. The beautiful thing about capitalism is it's all about choices, right? We've been talking a lot about the black dollar here today. Well, we all got a choice with our black dollar. You can choose to invest in a black business, or you can choose to give it to whatever Asian, Caucasian, whatever you want to do, right? I happen to own my own wealth management practice. I work down in Sarasota. I've been down for the last 16 years. So for me, the choices that I've made in my life, I've worked for JP Morgan, I've worked for SunTrust Bank, I've worked for Merrill Lynch. I was recruited Merrill Lynch at 24 years old. Okay? And the individual who recruited me, white man, but he inherited a $250 million book of business, right? I started at zero, okay? And worked my way up and increased the size of my practice 1,000% in 6 years. But I've been independent for about 10 of them. I've been in business about 15 years. But at the end of the day, the reason why I'm here is to now share my gift with more people. I unfortunately did not do a great job of that early on in my career. Not to say that I need it, I don't. I'm not saying that I do. But at the end of the day, I want to be able to share my gift of knowledge that I have about these sorts of concepts and in this environment. So if anybody has any questions whatsoever, I'm at LPL Financial, similar to these gentlemen over at Raymond James.
He says he's buying books for everybody in here.
I'm willing to share my knowledge and my gifts with anybody in here who would like to be more educated about these sorts of processes.
All right,
Okay.
so because of time, we have 2 more questions. We're going to have y'all stand up, do your desserts, because I got to make sure that the Mr. $1 Million Man and the sponsors, they got to go get something to eat, and then we're going to do the book signing, okay? So we got 2 other questions for you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right, first, thank you very much. All right, so I hear a lot about teaching the children, right? So can you help a father that has no idea what to teach his child? How do I teach him, and what do I teach him? And you see what I'm saying? Like, I want my son to know everything. I want my son to have all of this. I do this, I do everything and anything I can for my son to have what you say, but I can't tell him how to do that.
Well, that's why I wrote a book. You know. But let me explain this. No, I'm not trying to be funny. The whole point is like, I wrote that book because I had these millionaire mentors that I learned from, and one of them I lived with in my last couple of years in college. And then I read a lot of books on personal finance in college because I was inspired by Mr. Bruce, who was a guy who hurt his back working at a prison as a janitor and became an avid stock investor and owner of apartment buildings and hotels and the whole 9 yards. So I learned from him. He never told me what to do, but he inspired me to continue to read and learn more about it. So this book is a culmination of my mentors, of what I've read, and what I've done. And so I read a lot of personal finance books that basically when I finished reading them, I was inspired, but there was a huge gap between the rubber and the road. My book starts you on the road. Starts you from the bottom, right? And what I've tried to do is give you is that most personal finance book gives you a piece. They all cover the same topics, same exact topics. From Susie Orman to Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey just wants you to get out of debt and never invest until you're debt free. I want you to invest day one regardless of your debt.
It's some good debt, right? Good debt.
It's good debt and bad debt. Get rid of the bad debt. Don't increase your debt, but invest day one. That's one of the problems that we do in our community. We raise our debt, we lower our debt. We raise our debt, we lower our debt. We never get investing. And then 10, 15, 20, 30 years go by, we haven't invested anything in our portfolio. You got to keep that money for yourself. It's just like I'm fighting a boxing match and all I'm doing is I'm rope-a-doping. I'm just like, up against the ropes, just playing defense. I never hit any power punches. Your investments are your power punches. You got to get off the ropes and start making power punches, and that's going to inspire you to pay down debt faster because it's going to free up more capital for you to invest more. Because the only way you're going to get your investments to generate the income for you, the investment should be doing the work. And if it's ever going to do the work, you have to kind of load up that investment fund. So I'm telling you, I'm not trying to oversell my book. I didn't do this for money. I did this because it's my passion, and I believe that our community was confused about what do we do with our money and how do we get started. And most of the books out there just give you a piece here, a piece there. They don't tell you the entire system. We need a system that says, how do I take my paycheck and turn it into assets that appreciate and generate income? And that's exactly what I'm doing.
Hey, Cedric, how you doing, brother?
What's up, Dave?
It's good seeing you again.
Yeah.
So, I'm David Carmina, CEO of Carmina Enterprises, and I have a podcast, the David Carmina Show. And I was lucky enough to have Cedric on the show.
I was the lucky one.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. I want to ask you the number one question. When you was on the show, we had over 5,000 views in the last 48 hours.
Wow.
And the number one question is that I'm a black female in my 30s to 40s, average income. What is the one step I need to do to start investing? That was our number one question by far. And if you can just restate that.
The number one thing you need to do, and this is not a plug for Charles Schwab because I did read, my first book I read was How to Be Your Own Stockbroker by Charles Schwab. I'm a big fan of Charles Schwab, and fortunately I was able to get them to sponsor the Black Wealth Summit. But they have that's a great question. They have a program called the Schwab Starter Kit. Anybody heard of it? And with just $50, you can open up a brokerage account, and they will match that with $101 that they'll invest into a slice of the S&P 500, which is the Standard & Poor's 500, which is an index of all the biggest companies out there that they use to measure whether or not the market is growing or not. They will give you that. They'll give you a slice of it for that $101 for free. And then they have a 24/7 hotline where they can call and talk to you about any kind of investment advice you need on using their platform. And they've got classes and seminars. The name of the game is, I talk about how do you change your mindset. First thing you have to do, you have to change your environment. If you want to soar like eagles, you can't hang with turkeys. Right? Show me your friends, I'll show you your future, right? My friend is Hugh Campbell. This is the kind of stuff we talk about on our boats.
Any turkeys in here?
All right. So you have to change your environment. The second thing, you have to change your programming by what you read, by what you let enter into your head. Too much of our programming is happening through music videos, social media. There's nothing wrong with it. You can still do that, but you got to make some time for that good content to basically, challenge your mindset. And then you start to practice things differently. So when you change your environment, change your programming, and change your practices, within time you will improve. That's why it takes a long time to become a millionaire. It takes time to change your mindset. It takes time to build up the capital. It takes time for the market to kind of go up and down, right? It just takes time. I'm here to tell you that so you know that if it's going slow, then it's supposed to, right? No one gets rich fast. You know who the fastest billionaire was? Anybody know? Anyone know who got to billions fast? No, it was Kylie Jenner's. You know who the second one was? Mark Zuckerberg. You know how much capital it took to get Facebook off the ground? Right? You know how long it took him to become profitable? You know how many lines of code he had to write or steal? Right? It took him like 5 years to become a billionaire. 5 or 6 years. It takes time. It's okay. Right? We're going to fail forward. Right? In the words of John C. Maxwell, we're not going to lose. We're either going to learn or we're going to win. Those are the only two options.
Cedric.
What's up, 06?
So I had him on my podcast, thought he kind of talked to everybody plugging their stuff. Appreciate you, first of all, for coming on. But we talking about a money talk, but I want to talk about discipline. So obviously that's one of the main components to getting to that million. So when you want to develop that discipline, where would you suggest somebody starts?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that question. Because I, contrary to others, and I don't want to create any drama here, I don't believe in discipline. Discipline is forced. And my book is not about discipline. It's about values. Values and priorities. See, what I realized, the big theme in my book is that your money outcomes is a direct impact of your money behaviors. The reason why you have that outcome is because of some behavior that you had. Your money behavior is the shadow of the things that you value or prioritize. So the reason why I always did well with money is because I valued it. I valued it, and then my behaviors followed it, and then the outcome followed my behaviors. And so the reason why I tell you that is I didn't have to, Marquez is the guy I mentor. His dad is in the back. He plays for the Kansas City Chiefs, number 11. He's going to do a book signing with me in St. Pete. He and I, we talk about that. His parents probably didn't have to tell him to go to the gym. His parents didn't tell him that you need to have a running time of whatever he runs, 4:3:40. They didn't tell him he needed to go to the gym, that he needed to practice this. Any ball player. We as a people have proven that we can do anything we want to. Amen. Right? We've got the Civil Rights Act of 1964 signed. We can do anything we want to. So the whole point is like, you don't have a discipline problem, you have a value problem. Because your values are like your priorities. And I kind of came up with that also because my parents were very religious. We were holiness, Church of God in Christ. We went to church all the time. Sunday, we might go to church 3 or 4 times. 9:30, then we got to go back for 11:30. We go right from Sunday school into 11 o'clock service. And then, we might have to come back for a 1 o'clock or 3 o'clock service. And then we have a 6 o'clock service. They used to call it young people willing to worship. I used to call it young people unwilling to worship. And then we had an 8 o'clock service, and we didn't get out sometime until 10. And if the Spirit's moving, we ain't get out till 11. I got to go to school the next day. We went to church on Fridays, went to church on Wednesdays, right? It was effortless for my parents because they valued their Christian relationship, and that's how they manifested it. Some people, you tell people to go to church that much now, they're like, oh no, I ain't putting that much time in church. So my whole point is, when it comes to your money, I realize if you can change your values, and until you have that breakthrough in your values, nothing's going to change. Tony Robbins in his book says that a breakthrough can happen at any moment, but it could take years for that breakthrough to happen. And when that breakthrough is a newfound commitment to a new thing that you want, right? We're struggling because we feel good when we go buy that Gucci bag. As long as you feel good about it, I don't want to pick on the ladies, when we buy those spinner wheels, as long as you feel good about bad decisions, you're not going to, but until you have that breakthrough and you start having that feeling on the inside that says, I shouldn't have done that. I should have, and that happened to me. I was always good with money. I bought this Mercedes-Benz. I still got it in my $102,000. I called the bridge over troubled water in my book. When I got to the top of the bridge, I was like, this thing is not driving like that little Toyota I just rented. I was like agitated about this $102,000 car I bought. I had a $2 million house. I paid, $35,000 on the car. I could have paid it off, but it was my values were shifting. That was in 2002. And I didn't even call my accountant. I was embarrassed because there was something working inside of me. And so I was going through that breakthrough. And I believe that was my breakthrough. Why? Because in 2002, after I bought the car in 2003, I bought my first apartment building. 2003, in November, I bought my second apartment building. I didn't care about buying clothes. I didn't care about more cars. I wanted to get my assets working for me. This is at the age of 38. So what I'm telling you is that I was always pretty good, but I was always going through this slow transition. And the reason why we struggle is we're struggling with the things that we value. And it's hard in our community because our homeboys just got the new bins and we're in an old bins and we're feeling like I'm looking kind of raggedy. And it's just the truth. I'm talking about this in my book. I talk about my own personal transition, even though I was pretty good about it. And how did it change? Or who? I had German business partners. These guys owned they paid off their houses, everything. They had nice lives and they paid off everything. They didn't have Gucci, they didn't care about that. They may have a nice car, but so it's like I started hanging around different people that saw money differently. That's the key. I hang around my mentors, hang around people who look at money differently. That's what's gonna make the change. That's what if our community's gonna heal, we've gotta hang around a whole bunch of mentors that we can learn from and challenge our decisions until we made our full transition.
Speaking of breakthrough, we got two last questions, and I promise you, that's it. We got to keep this thing moving because y'all got to get your book, right? All right, two more.
Mr. Cedric, it's an honor and a pleasure. Hi, everybody. My name is Bradley Harris. I'm a CEO of Harris Smoke Shop here in Tampa, Florida, cigar company. And I moved from Atlanta, Georgia to Tampa and started my business. And I had felt kind of struggle at first about how my business was going, how I was going to move it. But as I came and sat here today, my first time coming to listen to you, I learned more that if I can set my mind to do something, I won't quit.
Wow.
Hey.
And to listen to something like that, that gives me a mind motivation. When somebody comes up and asks me, how did you, what prepared you from, keep going on? And the first thing I'm going to say is go get Cedric Nash's book.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate that. Yeah.
Last one. Okay. Appreciate your time, of course, tonight, as I'm sure we all do. Quick question for you, and this may be more sort of a personal question, but obviously you have the Blackwell Summit, what you're doing, these two books which you currently have out. What is sort of next for you in terms of this information, right? You mentioned you had two more books sort of in the tuck, but we'd love to hear sort of what you have.
Yeah, I'm doing like a 10-city tour. I'm about to hit I'm investing in this because it's important to me, right? So I got a 10-city tour of all these different cities that I'm going to kind of share this message because I'm really trying to create a movement of a change in our mindset. And what's next is, so I'm doing the tour at the same time. I'll be doing an urban media buy, so you may be hearing me on Steve Harvey in various places talking about this. And I'm at the stage of my business where I've just brought in a guy to run my business. And what I did is I basically pulled all the cash out of my business for the last few years, put it on the sideline, kept it working while I still have my other assets going. So if he runs it in the ground, I'm okay, right? So I got a guy that's running my business because I wanted to have a time in my life. You see, I'm a compulsive planner. I planned for this time, right? So I wanted to have a time where I could do the things that's really important to me. And one of the things I think is we as African Americans, most of the times we live our life working for other millionaires. We've got gifts and talents and genius in our community, and we haven't even seen it because we're too busy making money for other millionaires. And so, this is really about creating the space and time to do what you're passionate about, right? To do what you believe God put you on this earth to do. And so I'm doing that, and I continue to invest in real estate. I think this is my retirement job, and it's not for money. It's because, like I said, I've got like about 9 or 10 books in me, following the same concept, but dealing with different mindset challenges that we have. As married couples, I've been married and fighting over money. We've got to figure that out. Got to work as a team. So that's really what's up. Thank you.